everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're so glad you're here. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure a couple more people will filter in, but I'm really happy to welcome you to Friendship in the Age of Loneliness, How to Make Friends as an Adult. I was telling my fiance this morning that we had this talk tonight, and we both laughed because it is such a universal feeling of when you're an adult, what's the best way to make friends, especially since we've been existing in this virtual space for the past 14 months. So I'm really looking forward to this talk tonight. We're joined by Smiley Poswolsky. Adam, but also goes by Smiley, is a millennial workplace expert, a Battery Creative and Residence member, and author, including his new book, Friendship in the Age of Loneliness, An Optimist Guide to Connection. Smiley regularly speaks at Fortune 500 companies and advises heads of state and foreign leaders about millennial talent, multi-generational engagement, and fostering belonging in the digital age. Smiley's TED Talk on the quarter-life crisis has been viewed over 1.5 million times, and he's spoken in front of 50,000 people in over 20 different countries. Smiley's work has been featured in the New York Times, The New Yorker, Fast Company, CNN, among many other outlets. Tonight, Smiley will share with us lessons on what we've learned about friendship during the pandemic and how we can put friendship at the center of our lives. We're hoping that tonight will be an interactive discussion, so please feel free to turn your camera on and raise your hand if you'd like to share. The chat's also open, so feel free to type any questions or thoughts in there as well. And lastly, we're recording and we'll post the video of tonight's talk on Battery TV, our YouTube page, after the event. And so with that, Smiley, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks to the Battery. Thank you all for being here tonight. If you feel brave or just, I'd love to see your faces. It's a small crew. There's only 10 or so folks on, so this is going to be super casual. I'm not going to kind of give a formal presentation or slides or anything like that. We can kind of just simulate us chatting about friendship. But I'd love to see your faces if you'd like, and if you're multitasking, that's cool as well. But thank you for being here. I know we all have a lot going on, and I know we're probably all experiencing a little bit of Zoom fatigue at this point as the world slowly starts to open up just a little bit. So thank you for taking some time to talk about this. I'll share a little bit about my book and why I wrote it and kind of my thinking behind it, but then really want to open this up to a conversation. And feel free to chime in the chat as we go. But my name is Smiley. The book is called Friendship in the Age of Loneliness. It came out about 3 weeks ago. And there were kind of three main reasons why I wrote this book. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Doug. The first was I wanted to write a love letter to one of my best friends. So several years ago, I actually started writing this book in 2017. So it's not a book that just was born out of the pandemic. I started writing in 2017 after one of my best friends died. So I had lost one of my best friends at the age of 32 to brain cancer, to glioblastoma, stage 4 glioblastoma, brain tumor. His name was Levi Felix. He was a really special man who had started a whole movement around digital detox and Camp Grounded. He started Camp Grounded Summer Camp for Adults, which was, I don't know if anyone on this call has been, a tech-free summer camp for adults where adults go for 4 days in the Redwoods. It started in California, and then we hosted camps actually in California, New York, Texas, and North Carolina. Nearly 15 camps total, and about 3,000 people attended camp for the 5 years that it was happening. And it was a movement all around in-person connection in the digital age. So for 4 days, we took people's cell phones. They weren't allowed to use technology. They weren't allowed to talk about work. So no W talk, no what do you do? You could only use a nickname. So if you don't have a nickname, we gave people nicknames. We had actually professional nicknamers. And the whole purpose of camp was for people to play and connect authentically in the digital age. Not something that we do normally as an adult, not something we normally do in San Francisco or the Bay Area. And it was a really magical experience for lots of people to channel their inner child, to play, to be creative, to kind of connect to a self that for many people had maybe been dormant for a long time or that they hadn't channeled for a while. It was a place for people to be vulnerable and courageous or vulnerageous, as we called it at camp. So I wanted to write a book that was about what Levi had taught me and Camp Grounded had taught me. That was when I started this project. And then I continued writing it the next couple years slowly, as sometimes writing projects go, really with my own experience of loneliness as someone who is a very social person, outgoing, an extrovert. Um, my nickname is Smiley. In normal times when the pandemic is not raging, I go around the world and speak for a living, which is actually a beautiful thing to do. I go to conferences and companies and speak about millennials in the workplace and generational collaboration and belonging at work. So my job is literally to meet people. And I was going through a really tough patch of loneliness. So I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, if I'm experiencing this as someone who is Smiley and is obviously a generally pretty happy person and a social person, then other people probably are too. And if you start to look at the research, you realize that that's exactly the case. 60% of Americans are lonely, nearly 2/3. This is data from before the pandemic. So before a nearly 14 months of social isolation and in many cases lockdown and quarantine, including 80% of millennials are lonely, 70% of Gen Z. So the vast majority of young people. And that loneliness, so social isolation and loneliness are different. So you can be socially isolated and not feel lonely. You can just maybe be someone that doesn't like seeing a lot of people or likes to be a hermit or maybe lives off in the woods somewhere and doesn't need a lot of connection to be happy. But loneliness is quite different. Loneliness is actually the subjective feeling of isolation. It's the gap between one's actual level of connection and desired level of connection. So when I started to realize that, I was like, okay, this explains a lot. This explains why maybe 60% of Americans are lonely and why loneliness is an epidemic all around the world, that there is that subjective perception of seeing other people's lives or seeing other people's connections and saying, wait, I want that, or I want more, or I want something deeper or something greater. And I started to interview a lot of people that were going through very similar things. I learned that the average American hasn't made a new friend in the last 5 years. 75% of Americans are not satisfied with their friendships. Often people say that what they're looking for is more quality relationships, not quantity. So they're looking for not necessarily more connections, more followers, more people to know. It's actually to go deeper with the people they already know, or just to go deeper with someone. So a lot more depth rather than width. And this experience really taught me a lot of things. It taught me that there is power in friendship. There is power in putting friendship at the center of your life. I think we're often in the world that we're living in today, we think that everything kind of has to be about growth and scale. And my biggest takeaway, I think, from writing this book is that there is a deep magic and power in investing in 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 people in your life. Sure, 10, 15, 20, that's great too. But simply reaching out to people and spending more time with them and putting a few friends, kind of saying, hey, this year I'm going to spend more time with these people, or I'm going to develop a correspondence habit, whatever that is. Maybe it's a letter writing ritual, or reaching out to people more, or hosting a activity club or a potluck or a dinner party series, or just letting my friends know that I'm grateful for them more often, or planning an overnight adventure with some girlfriends, or a deep hang where you're really kind of getting to know someone beyond just a lunch date or a coffee, is a really beautiful thing, and is actually one of the most important things we can do to live a healthy and happy life. Actually, a lot of the research shows that one of the biggest determinants of our health is the amount of social support in our lives. Harvard has conducted kind of the longest longitudinal study on happiness, and found that the happiest people at the age of 80 were people that had the healthiest relationships at the age of 50. So as the quality of your social relationships is one of the key things, if not the key thing, that you can do to live a long and healthy life. And we actually don't talk about that much, right? We think about, okay, wealth and influence and and status and all these things, but actually it might just be social relationships and friendships. And on the flip side of that, not investing in our social relationships, which, social relationships increase our survival by 50%, but not having quality relationships in our life can be a predictor of a lot of really, really negative health outcomes, including inflammation, heart disease, cancer, even the progression of Alzheimer's. Loneliness has been linked to increased risk of cardiovascular disease. One study found that loneliness can actually be as much of a long-term risk factor as smoking, smoking 16 cigarettes a day. So this is serious stuff. And on the flip side of that, knowing as few as 6 neighbors reduces your likelihood of feeling lonely. So this is actually something that might be done, is achievable, but I think it just requires a lot more intention. So what I wanted to write is what I'm calling kind of a cookbook for friendship in the digital age. In the same way that people pick up a cookbook every night, whoever your favorite chef is, Alison Roman, Melissa Clark, whatever you're doing, New York Times cooking, and you go to a recipe and you're like, oh, I'm not in the mood for that, but I'm in the mood for this or whatever. I treating this book as kind of a cookbook where the chapters are very short and it's full of a lot of different recipes to spend more time with your friends. So whether that's always going on a second date, I have a chapter in here about always going on a second date. So it's about a friend of mine named Sahar who carries around a friendship card instead of a business card. So he carries around a card. It says his name, has his phone number, says let's be friends on it. He gives it to anyone interesting that he meets. So they have to reach out. He's like, okay, here's my friendship card. And he always has a monthly potluck that he invites people to that he meets that month. Obviously, he wasn't able to do this during COVID, but he has a monthly potluck on the calendar. And anytime he meets someone interesting, he invites them to the potluck. And then he invites his other friends there too. So maybe they can come and meet new people. And it's just this simple way to have something on the calendar that creates kind of these regular heartbeats of connection. There's a psychological principle known as the mere exposure effect. The more you see someone, the more you spend time with them, the more you like them. So it's just this simple way. It's always on the calendar. It's pretty little effort on his part, right? It's a potluck. Other people are bringing food. I mean, he's hosting. But it's a simple but beautiful ritual. Another one, just to kind of give you a taste of the. Yes, please. Jeremy. Oh, sorry, Jeremy. I didn't see your hand. Go for it.
No worries. Does Sahar, does he have a family?
Sahar has a partner. He does not have children yet, but he's likely will soon.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to all this sort of stuff. It makes a ton of sense. I find that my personal ability to put time and attention to that sort of stuff, particularly time, gets diminished with kids. And I'm curious if you have any sort of thoughts as to, first of all, if other people have the same thing, and secondly, if you have any thoughts as to how to kind of navigate that.
Totally. I think it's a great point. Thanks for bringing it up. I think one of the key things here is figuring out how friendship is going to work for your own life, right? And that's going to be different for everyone, and based on their priorities, based on their schedule, based on what they have going in. And so people are going to fit it in and make it work within their own lives. So I think something like what Sahar is doing, hosting a monthly potluck, is actually could work for a lot of parents or families in terms of maybe inviting other parents or other folks with young children. So yeah, I think it's going to be different. I also have a chapter in here, a recipe called creating a support system for new parents, which is really about this idea that don't ask, just help. I think often we're kind of saying, hey, is there anything I can do for you? And a new parent is like, they're almost too overwhelmed to even, they're not going to take the time to give you the list. But if you just show up, I have a friend, her name is Sarah Peck, and she writes about how powerful it was that one of her friends, when her and her husband had their babies, just started bringing over Tupperware full of chili that they could freeze. didn't ask, just showed up, brought the chili, and how they still remember it, 4 years later. They just showed up with it. So kind of creating that support system. But I think one of the things, Jeremy, that you bring up that I talk about in this book is kind of finding we talk about love languages, finding your friend language, finding the way that you're going to show up for your people. That's going to be different for everyone based on what they're into, what they like, what their time commitments are, what their work and family and life situation is. But maybe you're a letter writer, right? Maybe you love writing letters. Great. Maybe you hate it. Maybe you're a texter. I was just talking to someone, she says, she wishes she could pick up the phone and call some of her friends, but they only like to text. And I said, well, have you checked in with all of your friends and seen what their preferred communications medium is? And she said, no. I was like, I think that's worth doing, right? Because they might not know that you love the phone call. And if they knew that you love the phone call, they might be more excited to get on the phone with you and chat. It's something simple like that, but we don't do that as adults. We're like, oh yeah, they're my friends. I call them every now and then, or I DM them or I send them emojis. It's like, well, do they enjoy? Is that how they enjoy being loved and being communicated with? So I think things like that are simple things in the book that I think just taking the time to kind of say, how are you, how do you want to be taught? How do you want our friendship to progress? Right. And you might learn some interesting things about that. But I think, the way that it's going to happen in terms of how we spend time with our friends based on children, based on some of us taking care of elders, is going to look different for different people. And that's something that we, that's kind of the point. That's the friendship is a choice. Friendship is a risk. It's going to look different for different people. I think that's part of this. There's no kind of one size fits all. That's why I call this kind of a cookbook, because it's like, okay, I might do that thing that Smiley said, not into that one, or maybe I'll be into that next summer or next year. And that's okay. There's not an answer here. It's not kind of the right answer. It's just the intention of saying, hey, I want to spend more than 4% of my time with my friends, right? And that maybe that's enough. Maybe saying, okay, there's one friend I'm going to get closer with in 2021. Or there's a couple people I'm going to reach out to that I kind of lost track with during the pandemic. I think we all can identify with that. How you're going to do that and how it's going to look is going to be different for different people. I see a question here from JP. Yeah, about cross-pollination and intergenerational. One of the things I talk about in the book is the importance of intergenerational friendship. So a lot of the data around loneliness shows that the highest levels of loneliness are among young people, and then people again over the age of 70. So it kind of dips. Loneliness goes down after people kind of are out of their 30s. And then it increases again once people are over the age of 70 or 75. So I think intergenerational friendship, whatever age you're at, spending more time with people that are older than younger and younger than you is incredibly important. I think the pandemic kind of.
Could you talk about that more? Like, why is that explicitly important?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has illustrated a little bit about how poor our society is at taking care of our elders.
I see. It's not important for us. It's important for them.
No, I think it's important for everyone. And actually, the data shows that intergenerational friendship is good for young people, for learning, for gaining wisdom, for perspective, for becoming more service oriented. It's also really healthy for older people to keep. In terms of brain chemistry and health and kind of awareness and keeping learning and keeping purpose driven. I write about in my book a woman named Aunt Deb, or Great Aunt Deb. She's my partner's great aunt. She's just turned 98 years old during the pandemic. And she told me about the experience of feeling like during the pandemic, she was living her best life. Now, this is a woman who's 98 years old. She had lost her sister's husband to COVID in May of 2020. But she had this awakening to how she was able to experience all these things during the pandemic that she was never able to experience before because of virtual connection and because of Zoom. So she was going to the opera in New York City from her from her own apartment, from her couch. And, transportation wasn't something that was really available to her before. She was going to language classes, a Bible study class. She connected with this 18-year-old woman through her synagogue and they became friends. She came over to her porch and they had a distance hang. They're still talking and hanging out. So all of these things she kind of developed. This is just one example, but just to kind of demonstrate the power of intergenerational connection. And I think is something that our society is not great at, but is so vital for our health. There's a wonderful organization called encore.org. I don't know if any of you are familiar with. Rebecca is. They do some great work. They have a whole campaign called Gen to Gen, which connects older folks and younger folks, especially around nonprofit work and activism. Encore careers are for people that are either near retirement or retired, to kind of mentor younger people and get stipends to continue their work in their field and stay activated, stay sharp, stay excited about what it is that they do, and to offer that wisdom to others.
Do you see a difference then between mentorship and friendship, or do you also, is it just all sort of like relationships with people? It's the thing that's important.
I think the big thing here is relationships, but I actually I love the word friendtor. So it's like a friend that's a mentor. I think mentorship gets thrown a lot. I do a lot of kind of workplace work, and the word mentorship gets thrown around a lot. I think it's crucial for organizations to develop mentorship, reverse mentorship. So not just kind of people with more experience or people that are older or people that are more senior, but kind of mentorship every which way. But I think I'm talking about something that it's a little bit deeper here. It has to be mutual. I think mentorship, when done right, is mutual, but sometimes it's kind of forced. It's like, oh, you have to have a mentor, right? A lot of programs are like, okay, here's your mentor. It's like it's signed. I'm talking about something there's that kind of mutual buy-in. Someone in my book says, friendship is not an on-demand tap, but it's a reciprocal intention, which I really loved, right? If you think about it, it's kind of like, okay, give me the beer, give me the kombucha, the on-demand, like I'll take it now. I want the cold brew. And friendship is a little bit something, it's a little bit deeper. It's reciprocal. It's kind of saying, I got your back, you got my back. I don't know when I'm gonna need you there, but at some point you're there. There's something a little bit more intentional, thoughtful, meaningful there. So I think mentorship can get there.
How does that sort of come about? I'm kind of like, sorry, I don't want to. I don't want to come across as like skeptical. I'm just trying to understand.
Oh no, that's fine.
The concept a little bit better. As I think about my history of friendships, it's almost always been with people that are a similar stage in life, going through similar things together, and we get thrown together and we keep on bumping into each other, and that's how those friendships are formed. And so I'm just sort of trying to think logistically about how those, like how, I'm 50, how do I form a friendship with a 70-year-old or a, 25-year-old? Because I don't run into them in my life. You know what I mean?
Right. I think that there are specific organizations, and I kind of list quite a few in my book in terms of apps and platforms where you can meet people from different walks of life. I think that like kind of putting that out there, that you're looking to meet younger people, is a great way to start.
It's basically what you're saying. It's a choice. Like rather than just allowing things to happen to you, you decide.
Yes, exactly. Kind of this sense that friendships don't just happen. There's a little bit of an intention there. There has to be an effort. And I think that that's something that we learn, especially as we get older, that it's like, when we're younger, these things kind of are, when you're a kid, you're supposed to go play. That's just kind of your job during recess or school, is to make friends. But in high school and college, similar, you don't have to try too hard. It's just, this is my study group, or, these are the people I'm working with. But when you are, 34, 55, 68, you have to make that happen for yourself, and you have to chat with other people. Have you met a younger person recently? Are you hanging out with anyone in their 70s? How are you doing that? Creating projects with people. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, I can just share that. So I'm 52, and one of my dear friends is 71. And I met her. She was a decorator, and I first, hired her. And then we just became friendly, and, you know, turned out she lived a block away from me, and we became friendly. We went to the movies, and she's been a dear friend for at least 10 years. And through her, I met her friend who just turned 85, who, let me tell you, I hope I, you know, have her level of wits when I'm 85. Yeah, so it's just, I think you just have to be open to it, and there's a fair degree of serendipity that comes with it.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think that there's one way, right? I think trying new things is a great kind of mantra. Colleen just put in the chat, which I love this, started volunteering. I don't know, Colleen, if you want to share this story.
Yeah, so I was looking for ways that I could help while I was working from home, and I got connected through My Life, My Stories is a nonprofit that pairs people with seniors to record their stories and turn them into a book. And so I had already been working with some seniors on recording their stories, and they partnered with SF Village, which is one of a huge network domestically in the United States that is basically social networking for seniors. And so obviously during the pandemic, they were looking for people to help with friendly phone calls and grocery shopping and even tech support, which I tried my hand at and was not good at over the phone. So learned that as a not my skill, but calling people once a week and doing grocery shopping for them. And I fostered two very close friendships, one of which I see a woman now regularly every week, and she's 75. And same thing as Rebecca mentioned, I hope I am as awesome as she is when I'm her age. But I would just say it's volunteering, I think, was one of the easiest ways that I found to meet people intergenerationally, both older and younger. So like Smiley's saying, putting yourself out there, trying something new can often kind of expose you to people who are outside of your professional circle.
Right.
Where a friendship isn't always guaranteed, but at least you're meeting people with a common interest that's not work related.
Right. Yeah, JP puts this in the chat as well. Volunteering and cultural interests, art, music, sports, Burning Man, social clubs, battery. But yeah, I think, yeah. And then also for people, you know, there's sites like Nextdoor, Eventbrite, Meetup, I think can be great places to meet folks. And then there's so many different apps that are kind of around for specific interests, whether it's cycling or dog owners or local parent groups or book clubs or cooking classes, all that type of thing can be great. I think, yes, volunteering, if you're showing up from a place of service and other people are too, you have a common bond. There's something to talk about. You're already doing something that's adding value and looking out for kind of your community, which is a beautiful thing, and I think is a great way to foster relationships, especially if you're trying to meet people that are older. Yeah, and I'd love to hear more questions. One question I have for you all, I'll just share, you know, kind of to close out kind of the only other thing that I wanted to say in terms of my remarks. And please feel free to reach out to me individually too if you want to chat more about this. That I think it's been a really hard year on every level, but I'm hoping if there is a silver lining, or if there is something that we can take from this experience, I want to believe that we will emerge from this past year, these 14, 15 months, cherishing our people a little bit more, realizing kind of the power of friendship, of our social connections, of taking care of friends and family, kind of the simple beauty in that, and a little bit like, I think we all kind of, I mean, I'll speak for myself. There was a little bit of taking for granted. I remember, 2019, oh gosh, a wedding in Austin, Texas. Like, here we go. Like, I got to go to a wedding, or like someone's inviting me to a wedding in Lisbon. Like, that's going to cost me, I got to get all the way to Portugal. It's like, whoa, you have people in your life that are inviting you to a wedding. They want you to celebrate with them. They want you to eat barbecue in Texas or tacos in Texas. Like, that's awesome. like, oh, I got another conflict on Saturday afternoon. I got invited to 2 things I got to deal with, Wait, friends want to have you over their house on on Saturday? Like someone's inviting you to go see a concert or go see a show? We should all be so lucky. And I know we're busy. We're not going to do all of it. And things, in a year, we'll probably be turning down social invitations left and right. But just to kind of take a moment to kind of remember that that's a beautiful thing and that we're all very lucky to have that in our lives. And that even having a couple close friends is enough and is a beautiful thing. And I think we lose track of that. So if there is a silver lining in the shitstorm that was 2020 to 2021, I hope that that is something of we just get to realize, how lucky we are to be able to do some of these things and congregate with people and get to see them. And I hope we value that a little bit more and value those people a little bit more. But I'm curious to hear more of your questions. I'm also curious to hear from some of you about how you think the pandemic. We've talked a lot about what the pandemic has done in terms of hardships for friendships. I think it's been very well documented. But I'm curious if there's been any positives or any gifts that unforeseen gifts that the pandemic has brought to your friendships and relationships. I see Rebecca's hand, and then I think Jeremy wanted to say something too. And Adam, I don't know if you wanted to share, or if you just had your camera on, which is great either way.
I would
Go ahead,
say,
Rebecca.
Sort of the double-sided coin. The downside was that I didn't see my friends, my local friends, nearly as much, was not in contact with them as much. The silver lining was that it reconnected me with old friends from business school who we decided, 2 girlfriends and I decided to talk every other Saturday at 5:00. And these are, one of them is a C-level executive at a major company, and I would never get to see her otherwise, So it reconnected me with some friends from college and things like that. So that was the silver lining for sure.
I love that. Similar experience of, my closest friends from college. We'd probably see each other every year or two at a wedding or a bachelor party. We started meeting up once a week on a Zoom call because we wanted to see each other. One of my best friends is a emergency room doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital and Elmhurst Hospital in New York City. So
oh, wow.
The 2 of the hardest hit hospitals, not only in New York City, in the whole country, in the whole world. So we wanted to check in with him once a week. We're still meeting up, not every week now. We've moved this about monthly on Zoom, but it's a beautiful thing. And I felt like we've never been closer. So that's really special.
And then I had 2 of my closest friends in San Francisco. One, she's lived here over 20 years, but she's Australian and she moved back to Australia. And then my other really close friend moved to San Diego, and we would see each other 3 times a year. We'd have dinner on our birthdays. And so, but now we talk monthly on Zoom. So we're actually more in touch now than we were when we were all in the same city.
Beautiful. Jeremy, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay. I thought I saw you unmute. Anyone else? Feel free to unmute, or even if you don't put your video on, you can still just share audio too.
Hey, this is Meredith. I just because we're having this conversation, I recently went to a dinner party, and it was the first time a lot of people have been at a table with people they hadn't met, and I noticed that we were talking about. It made sense. This woman's son was 8 years old, and so the topic of like when to talk about gender identity and pronouns and stuff came up, which isn't polite dinner conversation in mixed company, and it was great. I was like, we all forgot how to make polite chit chat, and so let's have this. This is cool. I don't know how long that's gonna last, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me. I think maybe I was excited to. I'm sorry, I'm not on video. I'm doing 10 other things, but I feel like it might be a little bit of a opportunity right now, because there's not a lot of times in our lives as adults that we get to make new friends. And I've had made new female friends coming out of the pandemic, which also, like, I think females don't always bond as adults. Like, why? Like, so So yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
I love that. It's kind of, I've been calling it or thinking of it kind of as like this friendship reset, where we kind of have this opportunity now where we're coming out of the pandemic. It's kind of like everyone gets a pandemic pass. Just like, sorry, I wasn't that in touch, or sorry. It's like, who was really, it was really hard. We all had a really hard time. You kind of get to kind of reset your friendships. Maybe there are a few that you kind of, people you didn't stay in touch with that you don't want to keep staying in touch with. That's okay. But kind of we get to like kind of have this great kind of acceptance of how do we want to move forward together. And I love what you said, Meredith, about kind of new norms. We never talked about that before. I want to talk about it now. I'm just going to bring it up at a dinner party. I know we weren't doing that in 2019. Who cares? It's 2021. We've lived through a pandemic. Like, this is how we're doing dinner parties now. Great. You kind of like get to reset the rules and reimagine the rules. And like every friendship now becomes this kind of rebirth and reimagination of how you want to see it, and get rid of the things that weren't working and focus on the things that you want to focus on. It's kind of like this rewriting a little bit, which I think is, again, whatever you want to call it, a silver lining, a new possibility. This sense that anything is possible. We get to kind of redefine what the relationships look like coming out of this experience.
I just wanted to add to that. Like, I thought that, by the way, thanks for doing this talk. I just thought what I've noticed is that a lot of the friends that I wanted to keep in touch with are the ones that there really is a small group. And when you're not doing the social distancing, the kind of true friends kind of dissipate, and then you kind of find out who your friends really are.
Right.
Those people that you really actually want to keep in touch with. That was one of the things that I kind of noticed.
Yes. I love that. Well said, Andrew. Well said.
Yeah, this JP is turning off my microphone here. It's great to provide this time to talk for everybody about our coming out of our whatever cocoons. I guess it's overused, but I find similar to Andrew, I felt there was a very huge kind of sifting down of society around us. Some tragic stories, some, I'm sure, arguments. Some it's just kind of like, what is the concept of friend really? People, I guess, who are in our lives before the pandemic, like, will we even see ever half these people again? I don't know. It's weird. I found myself social and I kept in touch with good friends, but I felt like very quickly it would just get to awkward silences, almost of like, well, how are your kids really doing? You almost wouldn't want to ask because you feel like that was going to be, who knows, potentially like a heartbreaking conversation or something, So I don't know. I feel like everything's still very surface level. I feel like everybody's just very much just like reporting on their self-sufficiency. Like, oh, did you get vaccinated? How have you been surviving? Here's my report. What's your report? I feel like I'm trying to reach out, as much as I can. Other people, I guess, in front of me, but very little communal energy yet. And I don't know. I've had a very different experience. I feel like I do lots of Zoom stuff, but I have some close friends, but never was like, hey, let's just voluntarily get on FaceTime and chat. I just feel like it would be, I don't know, awkward silences. I feel like would quickly arise. So I don't know. I'm very curious about, after these initial kind of social graces, where things will go. And it's also weird too. I'm single and it has like super, super lonely, but now it's almost like, yikes, all my friends have kids. And I'm like, yikes, if I need to like have kids, like that needs to be my focus. I need to be like, not wasting my time, like with frivolities, I need to like be a laser beam, or not, or I need to like take it easy and let nature take its course. Right. So I don't know. I'm certainly perplexed, and don't feel that community buzz, but sure missing it.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think JP, I totally understand, because I find myself getting a little bit bored with the like, oh, which vaccine did you get? And did you have any symptoms? And it's like sort of some of these like rote things that we're sort of diving back into as we come back into like the pleasantries. Like Meredith, I love that anecdote, and I want to come to those kind of dinner parties, because when people ask how I am, I've started to like really learn to become really honest and say, I'm having a hard day. I'm having a great day. Like, or how have you been, what's new, as opposed to sort of running down the list of like most recent things. I'm like, I read 30 books last year. I haven't done that in my entire life. So like sharing, being really kind of forthright with the things that you're excited about in your life, I've seen a little bit more permission and sort of like inspiration in the people I'm talking to sort of open up that way too. Because I do think that there's still a little bit of delicacy around, how was your pandemic experience? It could be really different for a lot of people. And I've definitely found that even in some of the social events that we've done here, we tried to ask them like, what's your silver lining? And someone was like, I lost a lot of people. I don't have a silver lining. And so we have to be really sensitive around that. So being a little bit more of like openly vulnerable, or at least volunteering things that you've done for yourself, I think can kind of help create this communal thing as we continue to heal on this really bizarre thing that we've lived through.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful. I think kind of also maybe having like a question or two that is a little bit not pandemic related, if I mean, you can be, but something you're looking forward to, something you're reading right now, something you're working on right now, what's a creative project you're excited about, what's something on the calendar that that you're really looking forward to, what's something you hope is going to happen this year, just kind of to start to get kind of build new ground. There's a little section in the book, this is even in normal times, not pandemic, I hate small talk. So it's kind of this 20 questions more interesting than what do you do, because the what do you do is important and relevant sometimes, and obviously probably many people on this call know very interesting people that do cool stuff, and it generally doesn't lead to the most meaningful, mind-blowing conversation, as opposed to something like, what's a dream you're having right now, what's something that's keeping you up at night, if you were to write a book this year, what would the book be, something like that. Also, I think what you're speaking to is just this next phase. Like, I actually think I know this is not what we want to hear. It might be even harder than some of the last year we've been with, because in many ways, there was actually a study that found last summer that loneliness levels in the early stages of the pandemic actually decreased, contrary to popular opinion, because and this was done at Florida State in last July, I want to say. And basically, the thinking behind that was that there was kind of this, we're in this together, right? The sense, okay, it's a pandemic, lockdown, we're all going through it. And now we're in this period where like people are at different kind of levels of both comfort, safety, personal work life. Some workplaces are opening, some are not. Some people are going back to the office. Some are going to be full-time remote forever, or at least for the next 6 months, 12 months. So everyone's in this kind of like, we're all at the swimming pool. Some people have dived in off the diving board, doing a cannonball, or hanging out with 30 people, or are ready to go to outside lands, or, JP's going to Burning Man. I guess Burning Man's not happening, but he's still going anyway. Maybe, I don't know, JP, I'm just joking, but maybe some people are ready to go hang out with 70,000 people in the desert. And then some people are like going to tiptoe into the swimming pool and kind of say, you know what, I'm going to hang out with a couple people that are all vaccinated, my close friends. And then some people are just kind of sitting back on the lawn chair saying, let me wait and see where this thing goes for a little bit. I'm not quite ready to leave my couch, or to leave Netflix, or to leave Zoom. Let's just take it easy. And we, especially with our people in our lives, we have to accept that, right? We have to kind of meet people where they are, and also understand that our own feelings on this might change. We might think we're ready for it, and then go to a dinner party, and say, I got to get out of here, or I'm exhausted. It's been an hour and I haven't had this much social interaction. I had this experience. This was kind of a couple weeks, like 2 weeks ago. It was just the first hang of a group of our friends that had all been finally fully vaccinated, or hang out at my friend's house for dinner. And he just kind of called it. It was like 9 p.m. and he was like, all right, I think we did a good job. It's time for you. It was like, normally we probably would have hung out a little bit more, had another glass of wine. And he was like, I think we did good. I think it's time, just kind of like before it got to be, as JP was saying, a little awkward. But we had dinner, we played a little game, and it was like, okay, that's it. Let's call it. And I think that was beautiful. We all were kind of like, yeah, like that's okay. Like we're kind of all figuring this out together, and I guess we can just talk about that and realize that our experiences are going to be different. They're going to evolve and change over time. Right. And then the roaring 20s that people talk about, if that happens, I think it's going to happen slowly. That's just my thinking on it. But I believe that, I think we're going to have a roaring year of emotions. I'll say that, and feelings. That I know for sure. I don't know in terms of social experiences, whether that's both realistic yet in terms of just the way the logistics are and safety and the way the world is going to happen. Andrew says the boring 20s, more like it. I think it'll be somewhere in the middle is my thinking. But yes.
I may be jaded. I hope it does go back to that. I really do want the roaring 20s.
Same.
Can you share some more of those recipes that you were saying?
Oh, sure.
You mentioned, yeah. Letter writing sounds kind of fun. I don't usually think about that.
There's a bunch. There's like 60 different recipes in the book. They're very short chapters, and it's kind of meant to be something, little stories and inspiring kind of anecdotes, and backed with a little bit of science here and there for people to spend more time with their friends. But one of them is get someone else a gig. So I think we're often pretty focused on our own careers, which is great, but just kind of setting an intention once a month. Someone that is looking for a job or looking for a new opportunity, or maybe looking for capital or funding for an idea, kind of saying, okay, this month I'm focusing on that. Simple way to just put somebody else first, to do something beautiful for someone. I guarantee if you're reaching out to other people on behalf of a friend, they're going to probably support you, because they're like, oh my God, you're contacting me for your friend to have if there's any open positions for an informational interview, to set them up with a contact. That's a beautiful thing. Doing a creative project with someone or with a group of people, another simple way. I think all of us have met, really have probably developed meaningful connections when we're planning an event with folks, when we're doing a crowdfunding campaign together, launching a creative project, writing a screenplay, or the book, or some sort of project together. I have having tea with strangers is another recipe. I write about a friend of mine who started a movement that's now grown to an international movement called Having Tea with Strangers, where groups of 4 people that are strangers get together, and there's a facilitated conversation. There's kind of conversation prompts that's hosted, a very simple way to get to know other people. I also have a recipe in there called Having Tea Alone, because I think that one of the ways, this is probably not conventional for a book about loneliness, but I think there's a little bit of remember, the definition of loneliness that I use in the book was from Julianne Holt-Lunstad, who's kind of one of the leading scholars on loneliness, talking about the discrepancy between your actual and desired levels of connection. I think one of the ways we can actually work on this is to actually be a little bit more comfortable being alone, so that we're not like, oh my gosh, it's Saturday night, I'm alone, I'm feeling lonely. And instead it's like, I'm actually going to plan being alone. I'm going to use this time intentionally. I'm going to put on a candle. I'm going to play my favorite album. I'm going to listen to, whoever you're listening to these days, listen to some chill music, maybe write in your journal, meditate, read a book, hang out, just sit on the couch, have a comfortable night. And that actually you look forward to that time. It becomes more comfortable being alone in the service of kind of being more comfortable with yourself, which then maybe makes you more comfortable being with others. I talk a little bit. Go ahead.
One thing I was just going to share, I
Please.
got married later in life. I got married when I was 44. And so I understand the loneliness that can come with being single and having all your friends be married and married with kids. And you're sort of, not part of that crowd anymore. And I'm married now. I don't have kids, but I have a batshit crazy dog, and which is about all I can handle. And the pendulum swings the other way. So my husband, after we're all vaccinated, he went to LA to visit his family, and we put the dog in the kennel, and it was heaven being all by myself. So
Beautiful.
anyway, just to share.
Yeah, so those are just some examples. There's many more. I think really investing in correspondence is one of my favorites. I happen to love letter writing, but you don't have to, whatever you love to do. But I think that, we're so used to getting mail these days. It's just bills or catalogs, and just get mail that's not bills is a beautiful thing in this day and age. But also that can be done via video message. One of my favorite new apps that I do think fosters meaningful connection is called Marco Polo. You're just kind of leaving short little video messages for people. I have a section in the book that's called apps that do help you connect with friends, and I cite research. John Cacioppo, who is one of the leading scholars on loneliness, wrote a book called Loneliness. He passed away a couple years ago, and he talks about kind of when technology and social media is used as a way station for people to meet folks online and then connect offline, or to do something together. It's the place where people find directions. Then tech can actually be quite good for us. It can actually lead to be good for our social well-being. But then when tech is the final destination, it's not the place where you find directions. It's just the place where you go and you stay and you're scrolling, and 2 hours later you're scrolling and you haven't had dinner and you're on an ad. You look at an ad and you're just there all night. It's really, really bad for us, obviously, and actually probably contributes both to our loneliness as well as pretends sadness, depression, all of those really poor health outcomes. So I believe that an app like that, where you're using it to connect and hopefully meeting people, meeting up with people in person is wonderful. Things like Nextdoor are great for that, or Meetup. One app that I was using a lot, or it's more like a product during the pandemic, was Tribute. I don't know if any of you have used Tribute. It's creating video montages for people, whether it's for graduation, for a wedding, for celebrating someone that did a project at work, for a friend's birthday, if they're all across the country and you can't be together. Just a simple way for people to make 30 to 60-second little videos expressing their gratitude. It's really meaningful. It sounds silly, but if you get one of those, I guarantee you, and you watch it, and you see people that you haven't talked to in a while, or people are like, they're like, how'd you get my email? How did this person get your email? It's a really beautiful thing. So those are just a taste. I think it was Meredith that asked about kind of some of the recipes in the book. I also talk a little bit about community. I'm a big community person. So I talk a lot about exponential community in the book. So I believe we need to build more exponential communities. That's communities that have an exponential impact on their members, or so that, whether it's through connections or professional development or personal development, like you kind of start here, and then, within 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years of that community, you're having this kind of exponential growth in terms of who you are. And Camp Grounded was that for me, which is that summer camp for adults. I went to a program called Starting Block, which is a institute for social innovation that brings together a lot of young leaders and folks that are interested in social innovation, social entrepreneurship. And those types of places for me have been really impactful. And I believe we need to build more of those in our companies and in our culture. kind of where we're not just looking out for each other, not just looking out for ourselves, but looking out for each other, kind of finding a community of believers, as I call it, kind of people that truly believe in the beauty of your dreams. But I know, Colleen, we only have a few more minutes, but
yeah, I'm going to do a couple things to wrap up. I want to first thank you so much. I'm going to drop a link to the book in the chat one more time. But just a couple of things just to mention community at the Battery, since we're all a part of this community. There's a few things that I'm excited to share about. First, and kind of most immediately, we're going to resume our community dinners, which are kind of exactly what Smiley's talking about. You'll come to these dinners alone with 12 to 20 of your other fellow members. We're going to ramp them up as we can with more people. But we encourage everyone to come solo so they can be really open for communication and to meet new people. So look out for those. We're going to start doing those in the coming weeks. There's a couple of like requirements with vaccines and things like that, but we'll outline all of that. So it can be completely open. And then something we launched earlier this year called societies. There are community groups, and they're really in their nascent stages right now. They're split up into two styles: interest and identity. Identity is women of the Battery, LGBT, AAPI, and then interest is like earth and creatives and magic and gamers. And we're really encouraging members to participate in any or start one that they want to see. And we're really providing a lot of support. The point of these is to meet at the Battery, but then to take your connections, elsewhere. So for example, the Adventures group just did a bike ride together around San Francisco on Saturday, and it's a group of 12 people that'll now have their own bike rides moving on forward. So there's a lot of emphasis that we're putting on community. We realized not having our beautiful four walls to meet in, that trying to foster community online is difficult. And so we want to come back, and we want everyone to feel like they can meet people and find their own tribe within the larger Battery community. So I'm really focused on this. I'll drop my email in the chat. So if you have ideas or you want to talk more about it, I'm really open, and we want to make sure that, we're a social club, but that we're also believing in each other, and we're finding ways to connect everybody with people who, as Smiley beautifully said, believe in their dreams. So thanks again, Smiley. This was awesome. This was really nice. I appreciate everyone participating and asking questions. And we'll share this talk. So if it speaks to you and you want to share it with other people, feel free to share it around. And we'll see you all on the Battery very soon.
And can I just say, Colleen, if folks are interested, I'm going to put my info here. Let me just put my website. Please get in touch. Please check out the book. It's available wherever you buy it. Love to buy books. And I'd love to talk to you more about this. There's you just posted it. Great. And I'll post my website. I'll put my LinkedIn too for folks that are on LinkedIn.
And Jeremy, I did see your note about the timing. That's a great note. We'll definitely vary the timing so that there's some early and some later for some people with kids and who may be on work later. So good note. Thank you for that.
And I hope that we get to see each other in person at the Battery or elsewhere sometime soon. I plan on getting back there to have a coffee and tea in the garden. I miss that.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.